Good evening, friends, and welcome to a Friday night episode of Crime Time with DutyRon and Ed Wallace. Tonight, we're going to be discussing Sheriff Nanos now turning it around and warning that the public should be worried about this suspect striking again. And he was pretty clear. He said suspect one. He didn't say suspects. One suspect. We know that Sheriff Nanos in the past said, listen, these are his exact words. I wrote it down. Ed and I talked on it before we went live. He says in February 3rd, I do not think there is an active threat to the Pima County residents. And that was February 3rd. Ed, here we are on the 13th of March, and we got a complete turnaround. Your thoughts?
Yep, go right back to my song. You spin me right round, baby, right round. This guy is driving me nuts. He tries to dispel all the fear in the community, and then this late in the game, he throws the fear back into the community. Yeah, it's just nuts.
So if you're a resident of Tucson, you have to be sitting there saying to yourself, who is in charge of this and what the heck is going on? Because we're in day 41, Ed, of the abduction of Nancy Guthrie, and we're no closer on day 41 as we were on day one, according to what's publicly known. Now, there's also always that caveat of that they have information and they have things that they're working. But really, what the Sheriff Nanos is doing here is just yo-yoing back and forth. And if you guys have been following this case closely, I know most of you in the chat have been following it. A month ago tonight, on February 13th, Friday the 13th in February, an hour and Friday the 13th in March, a month ago, that was the rainy night that we saw the simultaneous hits being done, the parking lot at that restaurant where we had the vehicle taken into custody, and the hit of the person, Luke's home, his mother's home. And that was just a month ago. And really, we've heard nothing. It's just been crickets. So it's interesting to see how this case is progressing, or lack thereof of progressing. Ed, we got forensics. We got a lot of DNA. We had a look inside Nancy Guthrie's bedroom. Thoughts?
Well, so far the forensics hasn't been helpful at all. The DNA that was inside the house comes back to people that had legitimate access to the house. Then the DNA on the glove turns out it came from a restaurant worker thrown out and littered along the side of the road. And that turned out to be nothing. We got the video. And now we found out today that 3 other video cameras came up with some still images that are useless. So what do we have? Yeah, we got some videos of cars driving by now, and they're doing all kind of work up on that, trying to figure out, whose car was passing by that camera at specific times during that night. So far, it's a big nothing.
Yeah, agreed, Ed. Let's take a listen to this report by Savannah Guthrie's home sister station, the Today Show. So let's take a listen to this.
As the search for answers into Nancy Guthrie's disappearance continues, over the last week, so many people still showing up and showing their support for Savannah.
I've watched the Today Show for many years, and you become family.
We're not going to stop praying until we get an answer, and some closure.
Pima County Sheriff Chris Nanos telling us they're still working to identify that masked man at Nancy's home.
Do you think that this suspect could strike again, whoever did this?
Well, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, criminal minds are criminal minds.
So just as a reminder to the folks that are listening, this interview was by phone, not an in-person, but it was done just yesterday. So he said absolutely. And if you go back to the press conference where he had the FBI, the chief, or the FBI head of the special agent in charge, John Edwards, he was asked by a reporter, and his exact answer was to that same question: I do not think there is any active threat to the community. So here we are in March. He's interviewed by the Today Show, and boom.
I mean, criminal minds are criminal. Well, absolutely.
That could strike.
Nancy's home.
Do you think that this suspect could strike again, whoever did this?
Well, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, criminal minds are criminal minds.
While he didn't disclose it, the sheriff says investigators do have a theory for a motive.
We believe we know why he did this, and we believe that it was targeted, but we're not 100% sure of that. And so it'd be silly to tell people, yeah, don't worry about it. You're not his target. No, you could be.
He says investigators are still actively working their leads, including that unknown DNA.
Hey, Ed, while we had that image up of the district attorney's office, this was the day that, or the very next day, correct me if I'm wrong, and those of you in the chat who are paying close attention to this case, this is the day in late February that these investigators came out to the house. We covered it. They gave the family the access back to the home because we saw the locks being changed. We saw outside cameras being put up, right, Ed? So this was late February.
Right. So this is after this visit, they gave the house back.
He said in the press conference on February 3rd, 2026, that right after they were done processing the house, they gave the house back to the family, which is not true.
No,
So-
I don't believe that's correct. Yeah.
Yeah.
Still actively working their leads.
And so it'd be silly to tell people, yeah, don't worry about it. You're not his target. No, you could be.
He says investigators
Oh my
are
God.
still actively working.
You could be his target.
Oh my God.
I mean,
I mean, this is a senior citizen community by and large. Okay. So why don't you just put the fear of God into them now? Okay.
and Ed, we highlighted actual interviews by this network, by the Today Show. They went out to the Tucson community. Remember, they were sitting down at the coffee shop with a bunch of seniors, and they were all like, we are petrified of this perp is on the loose. We don't know if there's a homicidal maniac that's running around. We don't know what's going on. And now day 40, that was on day 40, today's 41, he makes that statement. Unbelievable.
Yeah, it's so unprofessional and it's so unnecessary.
You could be. Yeah, don't worry about it. You're not his target. No, you could be.
He says investigators are still actively working their leads, including that unknown DNA.
Is there still hope that this mixed DNA will be able to be identified?
Absolutely. That's going to get us to somebody, we hope.
Nanos also confirmed investigators have been looking into a potential internet issue.
And I got to ask you, and I want to keep stopping this because as that information is fresh in our minds, he was just pressed about that DNA and getting to a suspect. How long? I mean, I know that this is a process, and we talked to Dr. Colleen Fitzpatrick about this, but how long does this genetic genealogy, the forensic genetic genealogy, how long could that possibly take to get to a pro? Because we're now well over a month with that.
Well, this isn't a single source sample. This is a mixture. And they didn't tell us how many possible suspects or how many possible profiles are in this mixture. Is it one? Is it two mixture? A mixture of two? Is it a mixture of three? What's going on here? Now, when you have mixtures like that, it becomes very difficult to proceed further with separating it to get to a genealogy search.
Yeah. Here's Lee saying, DutyRon, those changes, the changes to the locks and adding security at that time is so troubling to me. A day late and $1 short. We said this many times. Why wouldn't a multimillionaire have it already installed? We pose this question to the general public and to our listening audience. There's no reason for it. It's a mistake. It's, again, you can't go back and fix it. But at the end of the day, that's a valid question. When you have unlimited resources when it comes to money. Now, Savannah, obviously, and her sister and her brother love their mom dearly. That's clear and apparent. But when it comes to home security, they did not even think about it, in my opinion. based on what we're seeing. I could be wrong, but if they were thinking about security for their mom, their elderly mom, 84 years old, limited mobility, on all kinds of medication. I mean, Ed, I don't have to ask you, but I will. If this is your parent, this is your mom living at home alone. I took my mom in. I didn't even let her live alone. And then she went and moved out east by my brother, which was a half a mile away, not even. And even then, we were just very nervous about it. Your thoughts on that?
Well, yeah, if I had a single parents that was still alive, I would not let them live alone. Right now, my parents are still alive in their 90s, living together in their own little tiny home, a couple blocks away from me and my sons and my other family members. And I was over there today. I'm over there almost every day, keeping an eye on them, making sure everything they have. I take them food shopping. I take them to the doctors. But if it was a single parent, they'd be living with me.
Yeah. And, we use these types of situations not to, dog on or expose somebody for making a bad decision. I think it's good to have a learning experience from this. Is if you have a parent that's elderly and that lives alone, got to have security cameras for them inside and outside their homes. You got to either, have some kind of, like my stepmom who lives all the way out, where she is, all the way out in the woods and out in Suffolk. She's got one of those pendants that she wears around her neck, and it's also, she can put it on her wrist, and she wears it to sleep. If there's an emergency or she falls out of bed, boom, she hits that thing. There's even sensors that you can attach to the bed. So we've gone very far with, with trying to keep their independence, because you can't take independence away from somebody. We know that. Our parents could be stubborn, but there's no excuse for not having cameras on his home. I'm sorry, inside and outside. That's $100 a year for a subscription. With Ring, I think I have like 6 or 8 Ring cameras on the outside of my house. And it cost me $100 a year. Come on. There's no excuse for it.
It's also confirmed investigators have been looking into a potential internet issue or other electrical disruption the night of the abduction.
There was a timeline when things went offline. So we're looking into that. Why did that occur? We check with our power companies. We check with others in the neighborhood.
And that's beyond just the fact that the suspect took the camera off.
Correct.
As the investigation goes on, an incredible outpouring of love for the Guthrie family.
It says, Nancy, all of us are praying for you to come home now.
Tucson artist Donna Prius, who goes by the name Pinky, has been leaving these canvas paintings outside Nancy's home.
Something they can save, something that they read.
Ed, let's address this question. Figs, thank you for being a channel member, and thank you for this comment. She or he says, your mom may not want to live with you. They have a right to their own lives. Yes.
Yeah, that's true. And my parents don't want to live with me. They're fiercely independent. They did live with me for a couple of months until we got that house in order. And then we moved them in there. But they wanted to live alone on their own, because they're still capable of cooking their own food, cleaning their own clothes, and doing all of that. They take, in the good weather, daily walks and things, but there are certain things they can't do.
When mobility is limited and there's a danger of someone being in a huge home by themselves, you either get somebody, a live-in aide to be there with them, or somebody that can live in that separate guest quarters to check on them, or you take some other measures. It's not a one size fits all here. And thank you, Figs, for that message. Again, I said it. My mom was like, "There is no way." She fought tooth and nail. I am not going to. She didn't even want to go to assisted living facility, but it got to the point where she could not walk on her own anymore. My mom, and it was a danger to have her home alone. And we didn't want to have a tragedy, but we did it as long as we could. We had her home, and it was really a tough go. But you look at this case and you say to yourself, you see all the security that was put in place after they took the house back, all of the locks changed, the security cameras on the outside, that all should have been there, obviously from the beginning. So.
And I think they'll feel it in their heart. I know Savannah will.
Now, in addition to the sheriff confirming authorities are looking into whether there was that internet or potential electrical issue the night of Nancy's abduction, he said they don't believe that the damaged utility box near Nancy's home is connected. As for what he told us about knowing why the suspect did this, he says they've had a theory from day one. We did press him, but he just would not say what that is. The FBI, for their part, has not commented.
I don't think anybody would believe whatever he told them about a theory anyways. Ed, and theories, everyone's got them. There's 100 million theories about this case.
No.
Yeah, go ahead.
It's not theories. What is it? Hypothesis.
Okay. Yeah. But Ed, I wanted to ask you about the questions about the pocket jammer that some people were suspecting that there was a potential possibility for the perp in his pocket. There was something with an antenna sticking out of it. Do you recall seeing that, Ed?
Yeah, I did see that. And, it looked very similar to, these simple little Motorola radios that, people buy when they go on to amusement parks like Great Adventure or Six Flags or cruises. And it had that big fat plastic antenna on the top, kind of sticking out of his pocket. So it might be just as simple like walkie-talkie. But they were asking, I know the FBI was going around and canvassing the neighborhood and asking people if they were having problems with their internet that night, or cellular phones weren't working properly, because these high-end burglary rings that have been burglarizing sports stars' homes when they know they're on the road at a game, they've been using those jammers to jam cellular signals coming out of an alarm system from the house.
Yeah. I mean, anything is possible, and we hear that a lot in this case. But those signal jammers, those pocket ones, I looked into, did a little research on them, and they don't really do a wide spread outage. It would be something that would be used just like close.
Yeah,
so,
you're not talking military grade stuff here. You're talking the cheap stuff that anybody can buy. If you had the military grade, you could take out a whole community.
Right. And this guy looked like a DutyRon. He didn't seem like he was, advanced as far as advanced planning and so forth. But I'm not sure.
You're trying to say DutyRon?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
So, the DNA, we talked about this. That's coming up in the news because people are pressing, or trying to press Nanos about this stuff. And people in the chat are saying, even if he did say anything, how are they to believe this guy? Because he changes him. He does that flip flop so often that even if he was to put out information, people wouldn't even really take his word on it. And that's unfortunate that he's lost public trust. And the residents of Pima County have to be kicking themselves in the ass for voting for this guy, because he is a complete and utter, what he's showing here is just completely disgraceful as it pertains to someone who's in charge of a county. And
he should have just let his public information officer do all the press conferences and give out all the details. That's what they get paid to do. So, if he was a little more articulate, a little more squared away, yes, like the sheriff and the police chief that was up in Michigan at the synagogue shooting the other day. He did a great job. Right.
Yeah, two totally different polar opposites as it pertains to professional and concise and clear. This guy's stumbling over his words, and it's just it's cringe to listen to Nanos. Thank God he didn't give more than 2 press conferences or 3. It's really difficult to listen to this guy.
41 days missing now for Nancy Guthrie, the 84-year-old last seen alive on the night of January 31st. And now, after weeks of investigating, authorities believe they may know why she was targeted. The Pima County Sheriff hinting at that, but declining to provide more details about the suspected motive. Investigators still have not publicly identified the masked man seen on that front door surveillance camera the night Nancy went missing. Officials also still working to process mixed DNA found at her property. Senior national correspondent Brian Inton has been reporting from Tucson since Guthrie's kidnapping. Joins us live. So, Brian, could the missing puzzle piece be this DNA analysis?
Yeah, that's what we are all hoping, Nicole, though there seems to be some complications with the DNA. You mentioned it, though, day 41, a few big headlines today.
Ed, at any time when you hear them talk about DNA, if you hear something that may not be correct, just tell me to stop. And
Okie dokie.
The sheriff was asked, do you think that this suspect could strike again? And he responded, absolutely. That was in a new interview from yesterday, which was kind of chilling to hear him say that. At the same time, he did say they still believe that the abduction was targeted, although he said they can't be 100% sure. And he said they do have a theory about what happened, but they weren't willing to release it at this point. In terms of the DNA, though, again, the DNA inside the house seems to be what could really crack the case open. We've been told that there's complications with it in the past, that some of it may be mixed together, multiple people's DNA all mixed together, which can be hard for experts to separate. But you remember the picture of the suspect on the outside, Nicole, when he had the flashlight in his mouth. There was one point where he had the flashlight in his mouth. I spoke with a DNA expert at Arizona State University who said that really stood out to her because saliva is one of the best ways to get someone's DNA. And that flashlight to her was just really, really important, she said. Listen to what she told me.
by the way, Ed Wallace is shaking his head, agreeing with what our good friend Brian Enton just said.
Yeah, well, it's 100% accurate.
Thank you, Ed. That's why we all feel happy and honored that you're here, because when it comes to reporting on this and many other cases, sometimes misinformation gets out there. And I know that you are right on top of everything that's, broadcast and shown on this case. And it's just comforting. And I know that everybody in the community has deep appreciation for Ed Wallace. If you guys have that same appreciation that I do, please put a 1 in the chat for acknowledgement of Ed Wallace, expert CSI, interpretation here. So thank you, Ed.
See, now, let me just jump onto this, because that flashlight in your mouth, when you put something in your mouth like that, it activates the saliva glands and you start producing saliva amylase and so forth. And now when you have a flashlight like that kind of sticking or protruding out of your mouth, some of that saliva is going to flow with gravity down the bottom of that flashlight and get to the end and potentially drop off onto the mask, maybe onto your clothing, or maybe even the doormat that was not picked up and searched for that kind of material. Now, a simple alternate light source search could have found potential saliva on that mat in the field. You darken the area, you turn on your UV light, you put your orange barrier on, and if the doormat starts giving you like 90-degree drops of fluorescence, well, hell, get that shit to the lab immediately and have it tested.
Ed, and why do you think they didn't take that doormat? That doormat was still there it's still there.
I guess they just didn't have that forensic sense to do that.
We asked Sergeant Cross from the Pima County Sheriff's that exact question about the mat, and he shook his head and said, just another misstep by the sheriff. I really don't understand when you have such a case that's on the national and international stage, and it shouldn't even matter. Ed, you can speak to this. It shouldn't matter how amplified the case is. This is basic crime scene and evidence and forensic evidence collection 101, right, Ed?
Yeah, even before the video came out of the suspect in the portico there, we know from the blood spatter that is present that there was an interaction that occurred right there by that mat. Okay, that would trigger an educated crime scene investigator to take the mat, because you never know what's on the mat. You had some kind of interaction here. What's on that mat? Are there foreign hairs and fibers here? Okay, from the victim and from the suspect on top of this mat? Is there additional biological fluids that you can't see with your naked eye on that mat? You pick it up. Yeah, is there any information from shoes? Is there any soil, any pollen, whatever? You don't know what's on it and what's not on it. You pick it up, package it correctly in paper, get it to the lab, and have them analyze it in a controlled scientific environment.
Yeah, huge mistake. I mean, this could be the difference between breaking this case and not breaking the case. And I hate to say that. There also, Ed, could be a possibility that he didn't drip any saliva down out of his mouth, but the chances of that are pretty slim that he didn't do that, because he's in the middle of the night, he's under stress, he's in the process or has already committed a crime. And look, you know, like you said in the past, in many different cases, you got one shot to do this the right way. You can't, as Sheriff Nanos says, oh, if we need to go back, we'll just take the house back from the family. I listened to that tonight before we went live, before you came into the studio, and that was February 3rd. And he said, when the reporter asked him, did you give the house back to the family? He said, yeah, as soon as my crime scene investigators left, we gave it right back over to the family, which is bullshit. We know that that's not true, because the family wasn't there, and that was, you know, where everybody was just trampling up onto that area there where the blood drippings were. And Ed, you got to get into, there were some experts from that 3-letter agency saying that, oh, the blood that's in that vestibule there is indicative of that she was carried out of the residence. And I want to get your thoughts on that, Ed. I know I'm going all over the place, which I usually don't do, but thoughts on that?
Well, that in and of itself, that patent and the analysis of that patent there doesn't necessarily suggest she was carried out because of there not being a void pattern as she described it. You don't know how this individual was. I mean, this individual, the victim rather, could have been leaning over and didn't create a secondary spatter that would have created a void pattern by her shoes or the suspect's shoes, impacting some of the stains that were satellite spatter coming out of the blood dripping into blood. We don't know that. That's too far a leap for me scientifically to say that's definitively occurred that way. No, I would have to do a whole bunch of testing and be able to
make a determination,
do these controlled tests to make a better determination as to how that occurred.
As we know, Ed, and here are some of our fans from the Karen Reed case with, yes, the solo cups. You know, he's got his solo cup. Wait, we got to go full screen with that. That's a moment right there. Matches your shirt perfectly, Ed. You know, what I love about you is that you said this early on. As soon as we started covering this case, when we started with Brian Enton showing that video of that blood, you said, in your analysis, you said there is not enough for me to definitively say exactly what it is. But you, because of your processing of over 1,600, oh, wait a minute, I'm way off. 2,500 or more crimes. I did that on purpose.
Yeah.
And I saw your reaction. So Ed has processed over 2,500 crime scenes in his career as a first grade NYPD detective. And I would, any day of the week, put Ed's analysis and Ed's expertise up against anybody that you see out there talking head-wise on the internet. He's second to none, this guy right above me right here.
I teach a 40-hour basic bloodstain pattern analysis course. I developed it for the United States Department of Justice, National Institute of Justice, Office of Domestic Preparedness. No, I'm sorry, not Office of Domestic Preparedness. I forgot what the other initials are. But anyhow, I won a grant that we were teaching investigators from the United States all over the nation on bloodstain patterns at the New York City Medical Examiner's Office. And then I took that show on the road and I teach it. I was teaching it several times a year over in New Jersey for the New Jersey State Police and so forth. And up in Boston, I did a course up there as well.
Yeah, your resume is impressive, Ed, in what you do and what you continue to do. Look who's here. We better have our memo books up.
Amazing Aunt.
The Sergeant.
The Sergeant's here. She wants to scratch.
Yeah, my book is up. How about yours? Is yours up to date?
Yes, up to date.
All right, fair enough. Let's let the rest of this play. And I apologize to the audience for kind of going all over the place here, but we haven't been live in 7 days on the Guthrie case, and there was so much that I was thinking about. And I apologize for going all over the place. Thank you, Nicholas, for the $5 super chat. And she says, oh, okay. And she says, thank you, Ron and Ed, for keeping on this story. Excellent, responsible reporting. Well, I thank you. Kristen, you can put that one back up, or whoever did that. Was that you, Ed?
That was me. It was this one.
Yeah.
And the answer is no. The actual consultant for the bloodstain portions of Dexter was by a guy named Toby Wilson out of Miami Metro-Dade police there. He was their bloodstain pattern expert for this show.
Yeah. All right. So let's let the rest of this play.
DNA all mixed together, which can be hard for experts to separate. That some of it may be mixed together, multiple people's DNA all mixed together, which can be hard for experts to separate. But you remember the picture of the suspect on the outside, Nicole, when he had the flashlight in his mouth. There was one point where he had the flashlight in his mouth. I spoke with the DNA expert at Arizona State University who said that really stood out to her because saliva is one of the best ways to get someone's DNA. And that flashlight to her was just really, really important, she said. Listen to what she told me. You know, he had the flashlight in his mouth in that one photo. What does that say to you? Could that be helpful for DNA?
Yes. As a forensic serologist, I would have cued into that immediately and said, that is a great source of DNA. So I would have asked, did they recover that flashlight? Because I would want to swab the end of that flashlight that was in his mouth where he was depositing saliva on it. Because I know from the video that if he's got it in his mouth, he's leaving saliva behind. And that's a really strong source of DNA.
By the way, before this goes any further, Ed Wallace, he loves to see the gloves and the sterile environment in that lab. Right, Ed?
Yes, that's right. No smoking, drinking, or eating in the lab, and proper PPE and QA/QC procedures.
Your thoughts on what she said? And that was just a small clip from a larger interview that she did. And she talked about other aspects of this case. But yeah, we know that flashlight wasn't recovered, but I wish that, we would have had a clip there of him asking her about the mat.
Yeah, she was spot on with what she was saying. And the mat portion, as I said, should have been collected during the initial crime scene investigation.
We also know from recent interviews, and Brian Enton, shout out to him. He has been on this every day for 41 days. Brian Enton is relentless in his reporting, and his professionalism is second to none. So shout out to Brian Enton and News Nation and Brian Enton Investigates YouTube channel. We know that the FBI circled back to the Mexican restaurant that Nancy Guthrie favorite. It's her favorite in Tucson, that they went and she did an NBC show, I believe, in November of 2025. And don't hold me to the month. I think it was November-ish. She went back home and she sat at that restaurant with her mom and I think her sister Annie, and they ate a meal and the cameras were rolling. FBI, according to reporting by Brian Enton, has now circled back and is interviewing and / interrogating. It says interview and interrogation of some of the employees of that restaurant. Now, most interviews are just interviews, and some interviews lead to an interrogation. So that's why I said both. But yeah, I mean, that's covering all the bases. That's leaving no stone unturned. That's what has to be done. That's what should be done. And that's what they should continue to do on every person that has encountered this family. The roofing guys, anybody who does the grass, anybody that does the pool, and right down the list. Right, Ed?
Yep, 100%. They got to get elimination from all of them and then compare it to what they're finding.
And also, Nicole, while he had the mask on his face, you noticed that his mouth was not covered with the mask, which is also a good sign for DNA because his saliva would be coming out, getting on things in the house. That's something else that they could test, Nicole.
All right, so we know, Brian, obviously News Nation is staying on this case. You are still out there reporting live. We know there's
the this is the cut from the Today Show. It's just Savannah, Annie, and the mom. I believe this was in November. So for those of you who are expertly following are on this case, let me know if I'm right on that. I believe it was November 2025.
still so much interest in this case. Kind of walk us through what the scene is like there now, more than 40 days into this search.
Yeah, it's very quiet at this point, honestly, Nicole. We've still seen FBI and sheriff's deputies in the neighborhood a little bit. They were out here earlier in the week. But for the most part, it's quiet out here. We know they have this task force behind the scenes that they continue to work really around the clock, working the tips. There are people dedicated to the case, but it's been relatively quiet out here today, Nicole.
All right, Brian Inton live for us there in Tucson as the search continues.
So there we go. We got the window tough girl.
Window tough guy.
Tough guy, tough girl.
Somebody must be walking in front of my house.
There you go. And so we do have, again, a lot of, as we would say, a nothing burger as it pertains to this case. Tons and tons of footage. There was also mentioned, I have written down in the notes, that the FBI was pulling and extracting still pictures from the two cameras, or three.
Three, yeah.
There was 3 cameras on the back of that guest house. And they confirmed that these images were not anything that would be of value to an investigation. However, they still have footage of people who may have been on the property in the days before to this crime happening, which is also, as we know as investigators, is good investigatory leads to go and follow up with. Ed?
Yes. Yeah. I mean, they got to track down those people and interview them and eliminate them, get their DNA. Hopefully voluntarily, they'll give it up, and then eliminate them as sources if they haven't already done so.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is what takes time. And people got, like, we are all, it's day 41. So we are all, at our wits' end and figuring, hey, when is this? But remember with Koberger, it was over a month or close to a month. And everybody was like, the Moscow Police Department, rinky dink, and they are never going to solve this case. They're never going to find the guy. And sure enough, Albrightsville search warrant, they go in there and boom, the door of his parents' home, and they lock him up on, I believe, the 28th day of December, somewhere close to that, at the end of the year. So yeah, you never know what could happen in a case like this, and it could break at any moment, so you never know. Schmitty in the chat said that Brian Enton's last day was today, reporting on this case on the ground, but that doesn't mean that he probably still won't give updates. He has enough contacts now with neighbors and with people on the ground that I'm sure he's going to still continue to keep up with it. All right, let's go to questions. It's that time of the live stream. So here's one from Lady Chan. Question. Left a question for you, Ron and Ed, on the membership chat. What are your thoughts, please? Thoughts in regards to this case?
You got to look at that question wherever she sent it. She said the membership chat. I don't know.
Oh.
You can write it here. Write it in the chat.
Here it is. Has anyone looked into Nanos? He's throwing the case. Look, that would be up to the Attorney General in Arizona, right?
What's the motive?
Yeah.
You'd have to establish a motive for why he would do that. But I don't know. I don't think so.
Let's take a listen to the new surveillance images, and people are going crazy about this because I got a lot of messages. This is one of the reasons that it prompted me to do this update tonight, is because so many people were inquiring about this, but this was, again, a nothing burger. Hate to use that terminology.
Investigators have reportedly uncovered more images from her home camera captured before her disappearance. And tonight as well, the sheriff is raising real concerns that the kidnapper could potentially strike again. as forensic scientists believe DNA now could hold the keys to this case. Our Brian Enton back for us once again. Tucson, Arizona tonight with the very latest. Brian?
Yeah, hey, Blake. It's day 41, if you can believe it, in the search for Nancy Guthrie. I'm still outside Nancy's house here, and there's been quite a few developments over the last 24 hours. You mentioned it. First of all, reports that the FBI now has images from other cameras on Nancy Guthrie's property. Remember, we first only saw the images in the video from the Google Nest camera right on Nancy's front door. We were wondering, because we knew there were other cameras, one on the side, one in the back near the pool, and we are learning now that the FBI was able to obtain images from those other cameras. But here's the catch. It's not video. It's actually only thumbnail images. So every time motion was detected, apparently a thumbnail image was created, and that is what the FBI has. They don't have the full images or the videos, just the little thumbnails. And we are told that anything around the time frame of when Nancy was abducted is missing, is not there, which is kind of interesting to think about why that time frame is missing. You know, there's been these questions about, was there like a signal blocker used? Some other neighbors reported an internet outage, and apparently her cameras also did not have any images or video right from that time frame when she disappeared, Blake.
It's not video. Seems like from a past era. Do we know if the images are clean or clear?
No, and they're just thumbnails, and you know how small thumbnails can be. So, and it apparently doesn't help much because it doesn't have the time around when she was abducted. It does. They do show some people from previous days, which could be helpful. They can go back and look and see who those people are. In fact, they even apparently showed the police when they first showed up on scene. So maybe there'll be some helpful things there. But the fact that it doesn't show anything from right when she was taken.
And I want you to take this one because I think this is important for some of the people who don't know the procedures and so forth. But Ed, with your crime scene expertise, can you take that question?
Well, I don't know why they would have needed permission to take the entry mat. I would have just taken it. The family, the mother is the owner of that property. The mother cannot, the missing person is the owner of the property, the mother, right? So who would you get permission from? Who would you need to get permission from?
You wouldn't even need to get permission from her next of kin, her daughter Annie,
No.
who's closest.
No.
Because when it comes to a crime scene, you do not ask for permission to take things into custody that would be, positive in the investigation.
That's only if the owner of the property is a suspect.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Or,
there's no power of attorney. There's no, look, you don't need to go that route. So I don't know how this came up, or thank you for that question. But when it comes to a crime scene and a crime scene investigator feels that this is instrumental or, positive in an investigatory capacity, they just take it. Take it into custody.
Right. There are circumstances where you need a warrant or consent to take something.
And it doesn't apply here.
But not here.
No.
Yeah.
Definitely not.
It's obviously not a good thing.
And Brian, what can you tell me about the DNA?
Yeah, so we're still waiting. The big question here is the DNA inside the house, whether they're going to be able to use it. We know that it was mixed. I actually went to a DNA lab at Arizona State University. It was fascinating learning about how this process worked. And the forensics professor there zeroed in on something that I hadn't thought about. The fact, the suspect had the ski cap on, the balaclava, but the mouth was still uncovered, which is a big deal because that means spit was coming out, which is very, very important for finding DNA. Listen to what she said to me, Blake.
Yeah.
The nose, is that a very good thing?
It is a good thing, but knowing where he was at inside the home would be very difficult.
So just because he was in there breathing and spit was coming out,
we wouldn't know.
That doesn't tell us much about, they can't check the whole house.
They can look, but unless he spit a lot, they're not going to see a large quantity, and it's not going to fluoresce.
Ed?
Yeah, well, if he's moving and, he's got that light in his mouth, some of it could drip off, but it could also impact his clothing, impact the mask. But it also can get to the floor. And, if he's, he's making enough saliva to do that. But then if he's stopped and he's bent over and he's got the light and he's looking at something like where he bent over to get the plant,
Right.
okay, there could be series of drops of saliva off that flashlight out of his mouth, and something similar inside the house. If you see an area where you suspect something was disturbed, you might want to use your forensic light source, like I said, in the UV range with an orange barrier, and search the floor areas there to see if he deposited any saliva off that flashlight at the locations where you suspect he spent a little time stationary.
Right. Yeah. But, you know, he asked that question of her, could they go and search the whole entire house? I mean, I want to lead you into that question.
Yeah, you could search the house with an alternate light source. There are scans that you can do for that, and then you see if you can get some reactions. But again, you're going to have to darken the entire house and turn on the light and carefully search areas. But usually, you know, something is going to draw your attention to a specific area, and then you're going to concentrate your efforts to that, as opposed to just turning on a forensic light source, shutting the lights off, and walking around in the dark with your forensic light on, trying to find something.
Right. But, you know, like I said, look, if this mistake was made with the floor mat on the outside of the house, and what we saw in the days that followed and the weeks that followed with the going back, and then the FBI coming in and setting up that tent to get the measurement of the guy's height, you know, that was well into the month of February. And if the mistake was made outside with that mat, I mean, I think in my mind, and this is just me thinking, how much did they mess up on the inside of that house? Like,
yeah, well, we don't know what was in the inside. Was there signs of a struggle? Was there objects that were knocked off a dresser or a table, or was there any signs that she was dragged through from the bedroom to the front door, or, you know, what was going on? We have no clue as to what was found inside that location.
People are still arguing about they needed permission to take the mat. Let's be clear, 110%. There is no permission required to take a mat on the front of that property.
From the victim's mat.
Yeah.
Okay. No, you don't need permission.
We want to just make that clear. All right. So Sheriff Nanos, in that recent interview with NBC, he stated he said clearly to Liz, that reporter, I don't know what her last name is, I have it written down somewhere, but he stated to the reporter who has been interviewing him on a regular from the Today Show, that there was he didn't say plural, he maybe misspoke with her, or whatever the case may be. But I want to go back to the February 3rd press conference, and let us know in the chat if you want to hear this. But he's asked specifically by a reporter. He starts taking questions, and he's asked specifically by a reporter about if there was any threat to the community. And he gave a really clear answer. So does anybody want to hear that? If you don't want to hear it, I'll link it below in the description, and then you could listen to it yourself. But I think it's important to hear this. This is on February 3rd. We're into March 13th, going on the 14th. So, by the way, Sergeant Aaron Cross is going to join us in the near future, to talk about what he knows about the case and what's going on with Pima County Sheriff. And there's a whole shitstorm of stuff going on with him, with his former department and his disciplinary record. It is interesting, to say the least. In Sergeant Cross's opinion, he's texting with me just tonight, he feels that Sheriff Nanos shouldn't even have been able to be on the ballot to be elected as a sheriff. So somehow the Pima County officials, who are, it's their job to vet a candidate to be on the ballot, and apparently they dropped the ball. So it's pretty crazy. So let's listen to this. I'll try to speed it up so we can get through it quick.
Is there any indication so far as to whether this was a random abduction or targeted?
It's like I said earlier, you know, we're looking at all the leads, and we don't know. We're going to assume both sides of that. We'll look at both sides of that.
Any idea what Nancy Guthrie was wearing, or the type of car that she might have left from, or any identifiable information that the public could use to help with those tips?
We do not.
Sheriff, do you believe that one or more than one person was involved in the kidnapping?
I just no clue. It could have been one. It could have been more. I don't know. Let me get one second.
Is there any indication that Nancy Guthrie is still alive? We know the medication played a critical role here. It's been 48 hours. She needs it every single day. Are you looking for someone that is still alive?
We hope we are. We hope we are.
Sheriff, you said earlier that you don't believe there's a wider threat to the public. If you're not sure if it's targeted, why do you believe there's no wider threat to the public?
Well, we have crime in Tucson all the time, right? Like any city. And so when you say a threat to the public, is there somebody out there who's kidnapping elderly people in the middle of the night every night? We've not heard that. We don't believe that's the case. We do believe that Nancy was taken from her home against her will, and that's where we're at.
Sheriff, when you reference violence at the site, can you elaborate on that? And also, was there a sign of forced entry?
He asked him, you said there was violence at the site. Can you say if there's forced entry?
Valuables taken, any bank or ATM cards used after a disappearance?
We're not getting into that. What I'd tell you is, like any crime scene, we processed this crime scene. We gathered all the evidence we could, to include looking for what? Fingerprints, DNA, camera images, everything you can imagine. And we gathered that out. Those things have been submitted forward to labs, to technological companies to help us. And we're like you. We're waiting for those returns to come back.
Did you find DNA that did not belong in that house?
The window of time from when she was last seen to when she was reported missing, and I know you guys are asking for help from the public, is there any way to narrow down what time you might be helpful? I know there was a report about a pacemaker dinging like around 2 o'clock in the morning. Is there any way to indicate to people, hey, look around 1 a.m. or 2 a.m. to help them identify what they might have?
You know, I really...
Ed, I'll let you take this one because I think this is a good question, and I know the answer to it, but I think it'd be better if you answer it.
Any chance the third exam of the crime scene like Idaho 4? Yeah, I mean, you could have another set of fresh eyes go in there and take a look, but you know, you're just gonna, if you find anything, you just got to hope it wasn't altered or cross-contaminated or contaminated in any way by all the people that have been in there in between.
There you go. Yeah, and so many people have trampled through that to that crime scene. You got the people who were in there doing the locksmith, changing out the locks. To do the IP cameras, you got to set up internet. So an internet service provider had to come in. I think we saw that.
Hold on a second. Maybe we missed a 3D exam. Of the crime scene. Any chance? Yes. You're talking about Farrell scans. I'm sorry, I misinterpreted what you were saying. She's talking about a 3D laser scan. Yes, I'm sure. Well, I hope they did that. I didn't see that particular piece of equipment initially, but I do know that I think the feds brought one when they did the portico to get the size of the suspect in the video.
Yeah. And we hope and pray that they did a 3D laser scan of the inside. We didn't see from a lot of the coverage. I didn't see any tripods set up on the outside doing the 3D laser scan of the outside, but that doesn't mean that it wasn't done.
Right.
Maybe they just didn't capture it, but I personally didn't see it. Did you?
No, I didn't see it either. But I hope they did it.
I hope and pray they did. Average normal adult, thank you for the 10. The system here in Tucson, obviously average normal adult is from Tucson. The system here in Tucson with the politicians is corrupt. I used to be a liberal, then moved to Tucson 5 years ago, and the utter ineptness from the city leaders to the sheriff to the DA just pissed me off. Wow. Well, that's...
sorry to hear that.
Yeah, I'm sorry to hear that. Let's see. All right. So let's go to the chat and first of all say thank you to the live audience and the replay viewers. the moderators and all of the folks who sent us super chats after the fact and leave us questions and buy me cups of coffee, Patreon support. Ed, a ton of people buy merch and stuff from us. So thank you to everybody who supports us. If you're not yet subscribed, please consider hitting that subscribe button. Giving this video a thumbs up helps with the algorithm. And I wanted to quickly just report that I got preliminary good results from not only the PET scan, but also the MRI that I got with the contrast. It's just an interpretation. I got to wait to hear from the doctors, but it looks like there was no new growth and everything seems to be stable. So that's a good one, and I'll take it. And I thank you for the prayers and the well wishes and the love and all the messages that you guys and girls have sent to me. I love you guys, and I appreciate you. Deborah, thank you for gifting 5 DutyRon memberships. So thank you to everybody who just became a member. I hope you guys consider continuing to be a member after that 30-day period. Ed, before we wrap up, is there anything that you would like to put into this conversation as it pertains to forensics, CSI, things that perhaps were seen publicly that you are concerned with, or maybe a message to people who are really invested in this case to hold on to hope-wise as it pertains to Nancy Guthrie?
So right now, the only thing that I know of any significance is the mixture DNA sample from the inside of the house. So let's cross our fingers and pray that, they'll be able to either eliminate it or find a suspect that is mixed in that mixture.
Yeah, I really think that may be the key to successfully cracking this case, is the DNA and the forensics. We also have to understand that there's so much behind the scenes with vehicles and interviews and other investigatory leads that they're following up on. And also, don't forget, there's still that $1 million reward. It's a 1.2 million combined and change. So that also too is a factor. But when you look at this thing, it's very, very confusing. Go ahead, Ed.
Yeah, that $1 million plus reward is definitely a huge factor, especially if there's more than one perpetrator involved in this crime and they didn't get a ransom and they didn't get paid. So, I mean, it could pit one perp against the next perp and say, you know what, I'm going to get paid. I'm going to give up this guy. But I'm shocked it hasn't happened already.
Yeah, here's a question for you, Ed. Why no footprints on the porch mixed in Nancy's blood droplets?
No, the footwear didn't walk through the blood.
Yeah. It's as simple as that, Ed?
Could be. Or if there is, maybe look at that floor mat again.
Yeah. I think that ship has sailed, but who knows? Look, the citizens of Pima County, the voters, are stuck with this buffoon until 2029. That's unfortunate. Unless something comes out that they can remove this guy. And that's going to be something for another conversation in a different show. I told Sergeant Cross if he wanted to come on and discuss, I'd be more than happy to open up the chat and the community to him to express his concerns. And I also said to him, would this get you in any further trouble? And he said, it can't get me in any more trouble than I'm already in. So he doesn't care. He's got nothing to lose. And it is what it is. Let me just see who's here in the chat. Hold on. Burn Pit. Yeah, I mean, I hear this in a lot of cases where there's no movement. Remember, we heard it with the two California City, Orrin and Orson West, since here in Classic. They talked about burning, taking their bodies and burning them. It's not, you need 2,200 degree plus temperatures to burn a human room, to have cremation. So anything's possible, but I don't think that's probable here. So Yeah, Jersey Girl says, thank you for the 5. Question concerning the front porch. I think she was bleeding from the left side. He let her out of the door on her right side so as not to get blood on him.
Possible.
Yeah, could be. There's a lot of different people in the chat, theorizing and hypothesizing that, there could be a wood chipper involved. There could have been this. There could have been that. I mean, yeah, could be anything. What do you got? Mosquitoes, Ed? They were coming in from the warmer temperatures outside?
Fruit fly.
There you go. Test results still pending. Yes. Test results are still pending. All right. Let's wrap it up. I want to just say thank you to the replay viewers, the folks who positively engage in this community. And I more importantly want to send strength and prayers and positive vibes to the Guthrie family, to the seniors and residents of the immediate vicinity of where this horrific crime happened. There's a lot of scared people out there, and they're not getting any kind of comfort from this clown, Sheriff Nanos, who, yes, has 4 stars on his lapel here. That's the sheriff's 4 stars. It's like a 4-star chief. So that's what my primary concern is for the people of the community. They're living in fear. They don't know what the heck is going on. So, Ed, I always like to leave the final word to you.
All right, folks. Thank you for sharing your valuable time with us tonight for this hour. And we know you can get your true crime fix anywhere you like on the internet. And we appreciate your support here with our forensic family. And thanks for spreading the word about us. As always, folks, stay safe, stay prepared, and watch your 6.
Amen to that. Thank you, Ed. And it's good to have you back. I'm glad you're back in the mix. And we'll see you guys on the next one. Until then, if you have any information or have any kind of leads as it pertains to this case, there's that 1-800 number. I'll link it down below in the description. Make sure if you see something, say something. If you know of something, say something. Step forward, come up, and give that information. We'll see you on the next one. Peace and love from CrimeTime with DutyRon and Ed Wallace.